Hi everyone, week 6, Foundations of Decision Making. Only about 5 slides to get through, probably about 15-20 minutes ago. So, into it. First off, we've got to recognise that not all decisions are made in perfect circumstances. In fact, most of them aren't. So we'll have a quick look at decision-making constraints. Then we'll move into decision-making continuum, which really looks at 3 basic models of decision-making. And here we go. So decision-making constraints, I think it's fairly obvious that time would be a constraint. In my experience, you never have enough time to make the best decision. It's always in a rush. It's always got to be done yesterday, if I can use that cliche. Often in the lower levels of management, you're constrained even more so by time because the senior levels of management have asked you to provide some sort of information, some sort of solution, decision about your expertise that they require quite quickly. This leads to the next one, information. Information might not be complete. You might have looked at the sales records for customers throughout the week, but for some reason the cash register, the till, the scanning devices failed on Saturday afternoon. So the information for Sunday is missing. Yet, because of time, you still need to make that decision by Monday afternoon and use this incomplete information. The accuracy of the information, very close to incomplete, but the accuracy might be wrong. What happens if someone's relaying some information to you and they don't tell you the whole story, or as a result of their story, you're slightly, I don't want to say misled, but it's very similar to that. Your impression of the facts is somewhat incorrect. The next one, risk. What happens if you get it wrong? A bit like importance. The risk of the incorrect decision making can be catastrophic to a firm. Or think of it, take it out of business for a second and imagine an ambulance officer needs to care for a patient and they apply the wrong drug. They've made a decision, this is the drug we need to use, and it's incorrect. The risk or consequences could be catastrophic. Importance, simply low importance versus high importance. A low importance decision might be whether to take the bus or drive to work. A high importance decision would be deciding which country to invest your business's profits into so it can grow the business into the next period or next area of growth. So the decision-making continuum, this is a pretty simple one, might take long. So first off, you've got intuition. This is what we simply know as our experience, our knowledge, gut feel. How do we make decisions essentially without many facts? We use things like values and so forth, but I'll leave that in a bit more detail in a minute. Rational, the opposite end of the spectrum. Rational decision making assumes that we've got all of the information that we can make. We can take the time to select, or to identify, analyze, select alternatives, review the decision, and put this into a feedback loop so that we can make better decisions in the future. That is the, if you like, the perfect or the scientific way of making decisions, whereas in contrast, the intuition approach is the art of decision making. Very little science associated with it. In the middle, we have something called bounded rationality. In Robbins, your textbook, it suggests that it's a bit of a combination of the other two. It recognises that managers don't always have information at their disposal, that it can be difficult to gather that information, and as a result we need to make decisions that have a rationality or a rational in basis, but not completely. There might be elements of intuition or gut feel included in those decisions as well. So into those 3 types now in a bit more detail. Intuition, whole pile of stuff there that underpins our intuitive decision making approach. So first off, let's have a quick, and I won't go through them all, let's have a quick look at experience-based decisions. This doesn't mean experience in that job alone. It means your whole life experience. It's decisions that you might have made in the past with your family. It's decisions in a different job, with your friends, and all of that experience comes into your mind basically, and affects the way you make those decisions. You might have experienced in the past, if I just use a simple one again of catching the bus to work instead of driving, you've experienced in the past delays from the bus services, so you don't want to catch the bus because this is going to impact on how you believe your travel to work will eventuate. So you say, no, based on my experience, I'm not going to catch the bus, I'll drive. Then on the other hand, driving, you get stuck in traffic, and as a result of that, you might go, well, it's 50-50. I might catch the bus because it'll get through the traffic with all of the bus lanes in the city in particular, or not. Okay, affect initiated decisions. So managers make decisions based on feelings or emotions. Even though we try not to, many people cannot distance themselves from feelings or emotions in the decision-making process. Pretty much all of the decisions you make are in some way subjective. We'd like it to always be objective, but in reality, we all have feelings and emotions. Even that bus example that I've just given you, it lended itself to a bit of feeling and emotion, in the sense that not only was it experience, but how do you feel when you catch the bus? Are you able to listen to your radio station? Yeah. Personally, when I drive, I like to take my shoes off. I don't think people would like me to do that in the bus. So is that part of the decision-making process in intuition? Yes, it certainly is. Subconscious mental processing. Managers use data from their subconscious mind to help them make decisions. It might be a situation that you've encountered before, and you're not thinking about it, I suppose it says, consciously. You're just relating to it. You remember something that happened in the past. A friend told you something that you think, yes, that's important to include in making this decision. And it's not something that you've scientifically studied. It's not something you've gathered data for. It's just maybe a little story that you've heard, and you think, oh, that's probably worthwhile including. Anyway, I'll leave it there. You can have a look at that in your text. That's the model from your textbook, so it might be useful a bit later on for you. Next one, the rational decision-making process. This is the one that is, as I said before, the scientific version of decision-making. So first off, we have identification of a problem. Well, it makes sense that if you're going to try and make a decision, you need to have something to make a decision about. This is important. How you define the problem, how you identify the problem, what you say is the problem, has a massive impact on the decisions that you make, or the alternatives that you make, and therefore the final decision. So identify, if again, it can be semantics. It's again the bus one. If I want to define the decision as should I catch the bus or drive to work, then that's one way. That's a very narrow identification of a problem. If I define the problem as how will I get to work, a whole lot of other alternatives might arise. Train, Uber, taxi, helicopter if you're that lucky. Number two, identification of decision criteria. So what's important to this decision? So the textbook talks about purchasing a car. In fact, I'm going to run with my bus example. Identification of the decision criteria in that example would be how long does it take? How much does it cost? Do I want to sit near people? Or would I prefer to be in my own enclosed space, somewhat alone, just listening to the radio? So then, once we've identified what's important to this decision, we can have a look at how we weight those pieces of importance. So what is the most important for you in getting to work? Is it the time it takes? Is it the comfort that you enjoy while you're driving or catching the bus to work? Is it the fact that in a car you can probably have a cigarette if you smoke, but you certainly can't do that in a bus. In a car you can listen to your radio station and have it up really loud, whereas in a bus, even with headphones, you're expected to be respectful of others. Next one. development of alternatives. So, like I said, this is, if I can go back a little bit, the identification of the problem really is important here. First off, I said, are you going to catch the bus or drive to work? There's two alternatives, that's it. But if I say the problem isn't whether I'll catch the bus or drive, it's how will I get to work, then the list of alternatives goes much broader. And you can remember those examples. From there, we have the analysis of the alternatives. So which one is going to actually meet the decision criteria that are weighted as to the most important? If the car is I'll start again. If the most important criteria for you is the speed with which you get to work, the bus may not meet that in an easy way. On the other hand, it may well meet that. The next one, number 6, selection of an alternative. To me, I think that's fairly obvious. You develop them, you analyse which one's the best, and then you select the best alternative based on those weights and the decision criteria. Often easier said than done. Finally, or not finally, number 7, implementation of the alternative. So once you've selected it, you actually put it into practice. I think that's fairly straightforward, so I'll just get on. And then a big part of rational decision is to evaluate the decision effectiveness. So did you come out with the best answer? Was it effective? Was it implemented appropriately? Maybe, pardon me, one of the decision criteria needs to be re-evaluated or reconsidered in light of what's happened in the implementation phase of that alternative. Really, looking at the bus and the car situation, maybe you've decided to drive, but your car's broken down because it wasn't maintained very well. All of a sudden, there's an issue there in terms of the implementation of that alternative and the need to include something in the decision-making criteria, likelihood of breakdown. As I said before, the middle of the road, if you like, between intuition and the rational approach to decision making is called bounded rationality. So, like it says, managers are rational within limits, bounds of their own abilities and the decision situation. So many people can't take into account all of the things that are required to make a decision. So we can only sort of put together a number of variables, 7, 10, 20, depending on your intelligence and the decision situation. So how much time do we have? Do we have good information? Is it something you're familiar with in terms of your experience in that job? Does intuition help you or hinder you? The term bounded rationality or the approach bounded rationality leads to a couple of things that could be pretty bad for decision making. First off, it leads to something called satisficing. This is accepting decisions that aren't perfect. They just meet the basic needs. As it says, they're good enough. Not the best decisions, not the best alternatives, but they meet the needs of the majority. They're okay. Again, not the best. And escalation of commitment. Sometimes we make a decision and it's not the best decision that we make, and then because we are committed to the decision we made previously, we will then try to keep that approach or keep making commitments to that original choice despite the evidence that it may have been wrong. You may have seen this in people or in businesses when they purchase equipment. The CEO or the purchasing manager has a relationship with the supplier. They do a deal about how they might get a good price for the product, but in fact, despite the price, the piece of equipment is not that good after all. Yet, because they've paid for it, because there's personal involvement and emotion attached to the original decision, the CEO or purchasing manager is not willing to change their mind and go back on that decision. There may be contractual obligations that also hinder them slightly. Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much it. So next week, Foundations of Planning. Look forward to seeing you there. Take it easy. Bye-bye.